Hi, I'm Christoffersen, and today we have the Moza Slypod Pro to review. First things first, let's see what's in the bag. What is the kit that we are actually going to be dealing with? So what we have here is the actual slider body. We also have a pen and tilt head, a tripod, the protective bag, and of course the user manual. Now the good news about this is that it's really quite easy to use. I didn't have to dive into the user manual. It's really intuitive. Something else I really like about this is all the knobs are really nice to use. They have these just slightly knurled edges, and they all feel really good and really smooth to operate. Up on the top here, you have this lock-unlock function, quite easy, and then that top is just going to twist off. For me, the way that I received it is that on this side of the slider, we have our power button, and all the way along down here is where the actual slider mechanism comes out. So this portion where we put the camera was mounted on this power end, and so that didn't make any sense to me, so I just switched it around. Not a big deal, but just so you know, this is where you're going to get your movements. So if yours is packaged backwards, it's super easy to take off. All you have is just this locking mechanism. Pop it up, twist it off, and you can switch it around. Okay, so that's what's in the bag. Let's throw it over to Dustin and talk about the technical aspects and how this Slypod Pro compares to the previous version.
So my part of the review today, since I did spend some time about 6 or 7 months ago with the Slypod E, is to give you a little bit of a comparison of what you're getting in the Pro versus the E. Now, first of all, we're talking about a difference between about $300 US for the E to $500 for the Pro. And so obviously, we are talking about a significantly different price point. However, you're definitely getting a much more Pro product compared to the E. So one of the significant differences here is the amount of travel, and that we have a double, instead of just a single extending barrel, we have a double extending barrel, which gives you an amount of extension all the way out to about 53 centimeters, probably close enough to where we've left the frame, versus only 28 centimeters with the Slypod E. So that gives you a maximum extended length with, if you're going from the end of it to the full extension, out to about 140 centimeters, but it folds down to only 65 centimeters for storage. So just to give you an idea, we're only talking about 6 centimeters difference in terms of the actual storage. And on that note, everything actually, with the Slypod E, one of my criticisms I had for storage is that if you had the head, for example, the head had to fit into a different section. You could carry the included tripod foot with it, but that had to go into a separate pouch. In this case, it's designed to where everything fits inside the bag that it comes with. It's a similar nylon zippered bag, a little bit larger obviously, but obviously you got a much more significant tripod foot, but it's designed in a much more clever way to where it can be reversed for storage. And so it doesn't add a whole lot of additional length. The head all fits inside the bag, and so you don't have to assemble / disassemble everything every time for storage. That to me is a significant upgrade. Now, interestingly, you go from the E to the Pro and you get a slightly lower payload. That's correct. You get a lower payload with the Pro version, but that's, I think, primarily because you're having a single barrel extension on the original or the E, and in this case, you have a double extension, so you're getting a lot further out there, some more flexibility in your shots. However, the payload is a little bit lower for it. Now, it's not significantly different, but what we are getting is a payload of 3.5 kilos in this horizontal mode, or about 6 kilos if you're using it, as more of a monopod and you're going up vertically. So obviously that's enough for still very, very heavy combinations. What we've got on here is nowhere near even half that threshold. And so, there's plenty of room there. The other thing that we've got here is significantly higher speed for extension. And so that gives you a lot more. I think there's 10 different steps of speed that you can access, but it means that you can get faster shots if so desired, up to 40 millimeters per second versus a limit of 28 millimeters per second on the E. So again, more flexibility for the type of shots you can get. Now, there's also a significant difference in the materials here. The Slypod E actually is aluminum construction. In this case, everything is carbon fiber, and not only does it look better, it also helps to keep the weight moderate, though we are significantly heavier here. But at 1,460 grams, it's still light enough to throw into a longer backpack or to attach like a tripod and to bring along. The battery life is also improved. It's more than double at 5.5 hours versus 2 hours, and you do have the option to connect like a memory bank, and so you have an unlimited power supply, and so that's great. So as noted, the included tripod foot not only is more flexible when it comes to its storage solution, it also has more versatility in its design. It is a much more stable platform, number one, and so it gives you more flexibility in that. And there's actually an adjustable ball head here that allows you some flexibility and control over how much movement that you have for it. So all told, there are definitely some significant improvements that, depending on your application, are going to give you a lot more versatility in what kind of shot you can get and what kind of applications you can use it for. Up to and including a second ARCA compatible point where you can attach a second tripod and add even more stability into the mix. So certainly, to me, a very worthy upgrade, probably the one that I would choose personally just for that added versatility.
So that's how it shapes up on paper, but what about in real life? Let's take a look. So what I have found really works as far as landscape photo, video with the Slypod Pro is to have something in the foreground, right? As we can see here, we have our shot in the back, we have that beautiful landscape, we've got the river flowing, it all looks good, but we need to go through something. We need to go around something for the Slypod Pro to really kind of do its job. I'll give some examples in a second, but see, as we move past this tree and we have these leaves and brush kind of here in the foreground, it shows us the motion that we are accomplishing. And I'll show you in a second examples of when we take away that foreground, how it doesn't really show us anything. But right now we have something moving in front of the scene that we're looking at. Now let's pause here, I'm gonna pause. That's where the Slypod Pro is really strong, is when there's something in front of what you're shooting. Now, some of those shots there, what was in front was a little bit too in front, and we'll have some better examples later on. But I just want to show you, whenever there is something in front, that really gives us the feel of that slight little motion that makes it really nice and smooth. Now, I'm gonna hit play once again, and we see these birds flying through the air. This is not at all where the Slypod Pro is at home. I saw one person talking about the Slypod Pro, and they were saying, you know, if you want to get some macro shots, then you can set the Slypod on top of a tripod, point the camera down, and say there's, you know, a little group of ants, and then you can go down, get some macro shots of the ants and get that slide. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a really cool idea. And then I went outside and realized that that doesn't work at all. Because as we just exemplified here with the birds, you cannot use a slider shot for that because nature is gone. You have a squirrel running up a tree and then it's gone. You have an ant crawling on the ground and it's gone. You have a bird flying, you can't catch it and it's not gonna happen again. You only have those moments once. Now, luckily for me, I had, I believe it was an 18 to 200 millimeter lens on the camera. And so I was able to quick pull into 200 and I just used the whole Slypod tripod combination and I was able to get that shot. But if you are trying to get a shot of birds flying through the air, through your scene and have that nice slide motion, honestly, you're gonna have to rely on luck because nature is not gonna wait for you. So, all right, let's carry on. Here again, I did mention I was zoomed into 200 and there are some boats over on the other side of the water here. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, let's really put this through its paces. This is a heavy load. I'm all the way zoomed in. I'm gonna put it as slow as it can go. And as we can see here, as it kind of went in, the tripod it couldn't bear the weight of it until it just kind of collapsed. And so I found definitely a weakness of the Slypod is whenever it comes to a lot of weight. Lightweight setups weren't a problem by any means, but it was when you got a very heavy lens, it was too front heavy. And so, for example, on the tripod right now, I'm using a proper video tripod. It's set down and it has a really big kind of attachment base. So there's lots of room where I can slide my camera to the back position to kind of counteract the front weight of a lens. Now on the Slypod Pro, it's a very small Swiss Arc mount. And so you don't have that play around room. So one thing I definitely recommend is using as light of a lens as you can if you want as smooth as a movement. There were times when I was doing kind of a product shot, which I'll throw in here in the background, but I was doing a product shot of a lens and I was using a heavy 50mm lens to do it, and I could kind of feel the Slypod Pro a little grumbly as it made the movement. And initially I pulled it up onto Dustin's 4K monitor and I looked at it and I was really unpleased because it felt smooth, the movement that I was doing, but the results didn't show. Now what happened, actually funny enough, is I brought it into what I used to edit, DaVinci Resolve, and it looked okay. And so it was like, okay, well, how did this kind of shaky footage suddenly seem okay? So I looked up online, does DaVinci Resolve automatically stabilize things when you import them, even though I haven't told it to stabilize? I couldn't find anything about that. So I don't know why. It looked better, and some of those shots you can stabilize in post, but of course you don't really want to rely on that. All right, so use a lighter lens if you can, and along with that, the slower sliding movement you can get away with, the better. Okay, let's jump back into the footage. We've got our boats here. So as you can see, there's nothing in the foreground to show movement here, right? We have people sitting all the way on the edge doing some fishing, and the Slypod is moving, but because there's nothing in the foreground to signify that, you can't really tell. So we come to a wider angle here, and on a wider angle, you can tell a little bit more, which is kind of, a little bit surprising that you could tell more of the movement when it was wider. I thought punched in at 200, you would see more of the movement because you have such a smaller, narrower frame that you're shooting, but that wasn't the case. It was on those wider angles where you could almost tell a little bit more. But ultimately, if you really want to make use of this, you need something in the foreground to tell you you're having that movement, right? As you can see right here, we had that leaf, little plant creeping into view, and that's where it's really strong. Here again, right, we had the rocks sloping down and I'm walking out on the dock, and this is the kind of shot where you have that nice subtle movement to come along and flow along with your story, where the Slypod, I believe, is really strong is when you're trying to tell a story. So can it be used out in nature? Yes, it can. And it does look good, but you need something to signify that there is motion there. And so while it can be used out in nature, and if you want to do a time lapse, then you can go ahead and do that. But where I believe that it's really strong is in telling a story. This is really in a controlled environment, I believe it will be the strongest. So as an example, I'm hungry, let's grab some lunch, I'm gonna shoot some things, and we'll go through that footage and see how telling a story really amplifies what the Slypod is all about. Okay, so this is the first shot. It's me fake cutting a bagel because it's actually already cut. That's not the point. The point is me grabbing the knife from the knife block and slowly pushing in as I transfer to putting that bagel within the toaster. Here we have a right to left pan, so you can see me taking the knob and turning it. Here we have a slight motion of me taking the bagel out from the toaster over to the table, and we have kind of that transfer where we're pulling away from the toaster so that we can move over to the table. Here I'm placing the bagel on the table, and then we have that shot continuing its motion. So it's the continuity of the storytelling that really the Slypod Pro excels at. That's where this tool is really in its home. Here you can see kind of a shift focus from the bagel to the raspberries, that kind of reveal where you're showing something on that Slypod motion that wasn't in the shot before, I think is a really cool shot. So here I've muted the audio of me talking because I'm talking right here, but the motion here does not make sense on that shot because I'm just sitting still and it's unmotivated motion. Motion in telling a story needs motivation. There needs to be a purpose behind it. So there's motivation behind the storytelling. Unfortunately, my storytelling could only be so good because I'm the only one on set. Now, if you have actors or a story that you're doing and people to work with, then obviously your storytelling can become much stronger because someone is going to be able to be managing the Slypod. And this is where I believe kind of the purpose and intention and really where it is strong, its strength point is when someone is manning the Slypod and you have a controlled action that you are trying to capture. This is where it's really strong. And I do believe that if your intention is to tell a story and you have that kind of controlled environment where you can take time and set up the shot and follow and track motion and can plan to use that foreground, then I believe that this Slypod is going to be a very good tool for you. So the Slypod does come with a ball head attachment down to the tripod section. And so if what you are looking for is an Elvis Presley microphone, then that's fine, that'll work for you. But for me, I didn't find that this was useful at all. Maybe if you're taking stills, then that would come into play. But as far as video goes, this doesn't really give you anything useful that a full-on tripod, for example, wouldn't give you. Now, what it can do is it can lock into place. So what it comes is you do a little twist, it comes down, bam, it's locked into place. And so I've seen people say that this is stable. The problem is it's really not. As far as whenever you start your motion up or down, there is a little bit of imbalance that can happen when you add a load on top. You can see it jiggle there. If you have some wind, then it's going to be pushing it around. And so every time that I have used the Slypod in motion, I've set it up with it actually attached to a tripod, which is great because it has that attachment here. And actually it has two portions here where it can actually attach to two different tripods for more stability. And so really I would find with this, you need to put it in a very stable format. So let's end with the strengths of the Slypod Pro. The good thing is that it comes with an app that you can download onto your phone, and it's a very easy connection with the Slypod. It connects very quickly, and it comes essentially with 3 different modes: regular, gear shift, and acceleration. So for gear shift mode, if I hit upwards, it starts with a slow movement so that there's not a whole lot of juddering when it takes off, and then it kind of increases in speed, and you can change the speed that it goes in. There's also regular mode where, for example, I can slow it down right now to 21%, let's say, and you'll see that that's quite a slow motion. So here in this regular mode, it's very customizable as to what you would like. It also comes with a silent mode feature, but essentially what the silent mode feature does is just limits it to lower speeds to keep it quieter. One thing I believe that the Slypod Pro is really going to excel at is architectural or real estate kind of videography, where you're trying to showcase an interior space. And so let's take a look at what we can do with it here in this church setting. So there you have it. I believe that the Slypod Pro would make an excellent tool. If you are interested in it, we're going to leave some links down in the description for you to use. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe, put a thumbs up, and I'd love to see some comments, what you think about the Slypod Pro, the uses of it, and what maybe you are interested in seeing on this channel in the future. Hope you have a great day, and remember to let the light in.